Ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the universe, this is RosterWatch. My name is Alex Dunlap. I'm joined by Cody Carpentier. And today, Cody, it's a big day. We're starting to get more kind of redraft ADPs in, season-long managed league ADPs in, and just kind of starting to compare those with what we've been seeing out in the best ball streets. Some of this stuff for home leagues is starting to come more and more into focus as we're building together the skeleton of the magical, mystical, mythical Roster Watch Ultimate Draft cheat sheet for home leagues. And I'm just looking at some of this early stuff on ESPN and from the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard ADPs from early season-long managed league mock drafts. And we're just some of these ADPs I'm a little bit worried about. There's some differences here. Today we're going to go over some players who we think what is the title of the show?
Got my brain for a minute. 6 ADPs that we don't like. So 6 overvalued players in 2025.
Okay. So do you want to start or do you want me to?
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start 16th overall right now. And ADPs we're using ESPN, Underdog, Draft Wizard, stuff like this. Devon Achane. Round 2, pick 16. Overall 18, 16, 18, and 13 for Devon Achane. I've always understood and could see the allure with having Achane on your fantasy roster. Like, obviously, we get the upside, right? The upside of having Achane is potential 30-point games because of the 30, 40-point games, because of the burst, the explosiveness that he has.
Potential 50-point games.
I mean, yes, potential 50. I mean, but last year he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 23 or more point games. He had 29.5 points or better, finished RB3, RB2, RB2, and RB3. Those were his best weeks on the season and gave you pretty consistent output, especially on the back end of the season with touchdowns. And touchdowns are the least projectable stat or metric in fantasy football in the sport, projecting year over year. And when I look at Achane and look at this Miami Dolphin team, my brain really hadn't been open to Miami not being good this year until I talked to our friend Matt Kelly on the Sonic Truth a couple of weeks ago when he's like, would it really surprise you if the Dolphins were the first pick next year? Like, and I was like, well, everybody knows, the basic teams that should be in that conversation. The Saints, the Jets, there should be these like not good teams. The Dolphins, though, feel like they're 8 and 9, 9 and 8, potentially 10 and 7. But what if Ramsey's potentially leaked out there in a trade right now to an NFC South team? Tyreek Hill potentially on the move.
Is that the rumor to an NFC South team?
Yes, there was a leak yesterday night about a team. I'll tell you after the show.
I mean something's gonna happen quick, right?
Well, so really, what it was Darren Bates, who's like, I think he's the DC or the DB's coach for the Panthers. He was on a pod and he basically was like trying to say they're making a move without saying they're making a move, or some move was already done. It just hasn't been given to the public yet. And it was projected that was Ramsey to the Panthers. So we'll see if that happens. Tyreek Hill, I think that's also got to be an option to get moved.
They're gonna have J.C. Horn and Jalen Ramsey.
Isn't that dirty?
Golly.
And they would
not that it's happened, but that would be. I mean, that would be. Gosh.
Well, hey, man, you put the Panthers could be in the Super Bowl conversation all of a sudden.
Stop it.
Hey, I was listening to John Granado this morning. He said the 2 times Ohio State's won the national championship in the last 2 decades, J-Lo's gotten divorced the next year, and Carolina Panthers have won to the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, so then it's a lock.
It's a lock. It's a lock. Type it in. Yes, I'm going to go Devon Achane. Again, the ADP is up to 16 right now, consensus. And I get the upside in certain games. I get the upside in best ball, but in managed seasonal, when you go out and you add a guy like Ollie Gordon, who we know can take on 200, 250, 300 carries off the rip, and we hear the positivity brewing around Jalen Wright, even though There are people out there that I think Jalen Rice stinks. I don't think Jalen Rice stinks in football. I think he's really good. And I just don't see, again, there's not a lot of data that's going to back you up saying fade Devon Achane, other than he's 185 pounds. He's not going to get 250 touches, and you're betting on the consistency of explosive games to help you get over the top, which we love. We love those 30-point games. Those are going to win you weeks multiple times over and over and over. But what's going to lose you seasons, and what I like to evade in fantasy football, is evading injury, evading downfall, evading bad teams, as Trashman would say this year. He's like, I don't want to draft players on bad teams. Well, is Miami a good team or is Miami a bad team? Today, we might think they're probably a fine football team, but that could switch really quickly if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey are out the door. And Tua Tagovailoa, as we know, is a concussion away from being a concussion away. So I'm going to go Devon Achane here at 16. It's just too rich for my blood. If this was third-round conversation, I'd be much more into it. But in the second round, pressing up towards that first 1-2 turn, I'm just, it's just way too much for me.
Understandable. Here's my first one, and I'm just gonna do this one real quickly because I've talked about it before. And here's the thing: is I hate my take here because I know it could be really wrong. It could go wrong. It could go sideways. But just right now, where Omari and Hampton is going, it doesn't make sense to me. I figured that people by now would I understand the name recognition. I understand the shiny new toy. I understand if you're going to be watching him and you're going to be, just going based on the college film and your excitement level about him as an athlete, Omari and Hampton. I feel like right now what's happening with the ADP is in these early drafts, we have people that are super into fantasy. They're nerdy about it. They're into prospecting. They're into dynasty. They're into all this stuff, right? And I just feel like these types of players are not the normies that we're going to be going against in July and August. And by the time we get to July and August, maybe these things will normalize and we can take a stab on Omari and Hampton, where you traditionally take stabs on these running back committee guys who you think are super duper studs, more like 7th round. I think I'd be fine with that. But dude, he's going right now he's going 45 on the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. He's going 43 on early ESPN drafts, and he's going 46 on Underdog. That's where people are taking him. They're taking him in the 4th round right now. And for a guy, and I've said this on the show before, but I'll say it again, he's gonna be either your RB2, or maybe if a situation where you draft him as your RB1 and you can't be 100% confident even playing him in week 1 of the fantasy season. I can't do that. So for me, I'm going to wait to see if cooler minds prevail. If you look at like his expert consensus ranking, just from people's rankings on him over on Fantasy Pros, that's sitting at 62. So at least that's kind of in the 5th round. I just think as things get closer and closer, people are going to be like, I don't know who Omari and Hampton is, but didn't Najee Harris get traded to the Chargers too? And they're like, the normies are going to think this, and his ADP will fall. But man, in these early drafts, it's too rich for my blood for a guy that I love. I'll go into more detail about some of these others, why I just don't like them. I just wanted to keep this one short and sweet because I don't want it to seem like I love Omari and Hampton. If I have the 102 in Dynasty, I'm going to take him. But it's not for 2025, and it's not for the kind of situation where in fantasy football, one of our edicts, one of the roster watch just rules is get off to a fast start. Get off to a fast start, because in week 4, whenever your 1 in 3 teams are going to start panicking and making trades, if you're the 4-0 team, they come to you and you're dealing from a position of strength. And that's how you make consolidation trades and get the best player on your roster. Is say, dude, you're the one coming to me. Your team stinks. Like if you're going to do a deal with me here, like, it's going to be a deal that I like. And I want to get off to a fast start. And that's why we'll have the fast start tools and the strength of schedule stuff for you guys soon. But Omari Hampton does not seem like a fast start guy to me.
He does not seem to a fast start guy because he's not a fast start guy. He's a rookie behind a obviously like a vet like Najee that's in an offense that's going to run the hell out of the football. We might get a couple carries, but man, remember how hard it was with Nick Chubb that first year? And then what was the Nick Chubb game was he had like 3, even the game he scored like the 60-yard touchdown in, it was 3 for 60 and 1 that game, or it was 3 for 105 and 2. But remember the first 6 weeks for Nick Chubb, 3 carries, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. And the one game was a big loss, 3 for 105 and 2. It's just, he just didn't get it for 6 weeks. Right. And that's reality. That's the reality of the NFL. And especially when you're in a backfield, the guy that's rushed for 1,000 yards 4 consecutive seasons. I'm going to go with that guy that's literally next on ADP, directly next to him. So Hampton's right there at 47. Hubbard's at 48th off the board. Chuba Hubbard, Carolina's running back. He's 42nd on the Draft Wizard, 50th on ECR, 52 on ESPN, and 57 on Underdog. End of round 4 for Chuba Hubbard. And when I said this one before the show, I brought it up to you. I said, who's your guy? We got any of the same guys? And I said, Chuba Hubbard. You're like, I want to hear this one. My thoughts for Chuba Hubbard is pretty simple. I like Chuba Hubbard. But when I look at the Carolina Panthers backfield that added a 4th-round pick in Trevor Etienne and added a Rico Dowdle that a year ago, and I don't like Rico Dowdle that much, especially for fantasy football. But they had a Rico Dowdle, a guy that a year ago, remember, we heard had the juice at the Dallas Cowboys camp. And he's been the Dallas Cowboys offense. And they went out and got him. I mean,
we had Byron there. That's why we go to the training camp tour, right?
And do it. He's down in Carolina. They go out, they get Trevor Etienne, who, we saw firsthand as we covered Texas Longhorns against Georgia, against Texas. Etienne had pretty much all of his seasonal output. His best games came against Texas in the biggest games. He's got the bloodline from his brother Travis. I think Trevor Etienne's a really good running back that can push for opportunities in this backfield that has given opportunities to Raheem Blackshear over the last couple of years. They love Blackshear in the special teams unit, so he's on the roster, but Chuba Hubbard is the conversation point here. Chuba Hubbard last year, overall fantasy football output. Again, he's going off right now as the 48th player in drafts, which is the end of round 4. The reason, one of the leading causes, other than the fact that they added Tedrow McMillan, who's going to be a guy that's going to pull more targets towards him. They're going to pass the ball to him more. He's going to be the feature piece of the offense. I don't think the feature piece of the offense is going to be Chuba Hubbard. It's going to be the weaponry, growing Bryce Young, getting the ball to Leggett, seeing if he's real, getting the ball to Tedrow McMillan, seeing if he's real, seeing which one of the guys is the alpha, getting Jatavian Sanders involved in the offense. It's not so much going to be like it was a year ago where you're deprived of talent. You need to run the football because you're not a good football team. This is the year where they take that step forward in Dave Canales' offense. And Chuba Hubbard, a year ago, finished the season overall player 90. 10.7 fantasy points per game. Games that he had more than 15 fantasy points. Week 6, 16. Week 12, 20. Week 13, 22. Everything else was 11, 11, 12, 7, 5, 10, 7, 5, 10, 11, 11, 11. Boring. Like not winning.
Are you talking about standard scoring here? Are you talking standard?
Huh?
I'm showing him his standard is from last year is having 13.5 a game in standard. Is that wrong?
Where am I at?
Chuba?
Oh gosh, I have 2023 pulled up. Idiot.
Yeah.
Idiot. Okay. Idiot. So anyway, so last year he finished his 43rd overall in PPR. So this is a live mistake you're catching me on right here.
Sorry, I was just confused. It's like,
no, you're right. That was a great catch because I was obviously reading 2023 for some reason. I don't know how that came up on my screen. I had 2024 up. So in 2023, he finishes overall player 43, average 16 per game. So it kind of cancels out my theory here. My thought and my idea is the fact that he was going off considerably too high. And I don't see that 15, 16 fantasy point season on an average coming to fruition in an offense like Carolina when guys around him in ADP, it's Aaron Jones, it's James Conner, it's these guys that I think I can lean into more, even though they're old, aging running backs. The conversation, the fact that I cannot believe I allowed my brain to forget some stuff with Chuba Hubbard with that.
All right, so I'll I'll just move on to the next one. Here's one thing I can't forget.
I'll still tell you this though. I'm fading Hubbard. I don't like it.
Okay, all right. Based on the 2023 data.
Yes.
All right. Let's go to
Idiot.
let's go to my next one. And this is another one that I just hate. I hate to do. And it's Mike Evans. And look, it's just for me. Mike Evans is the outlier of all outliers, right? First, let's just go over what his current ADP and stuff is right now. So Mike Evans is going on the draft, like he's going right now. I looked at like the draft wizard, whereas I've been thinking about him on Underdog is going more like kind of into third round and stuff like this. In their mock drafts over there at Fantasy Pros, he's going off at number 29. So we're talking like more early sort of third round type of deal for him, right? And if you look at his production, I get it, right? But here's the thing, Cody. It's like at some point this thing has to end. He's going to turn 32 a month before the season, right? We know that there's a noticeable downturn as far as production, even among the best of the best as far as these wide receivers. But around age 30, you can start looking for it, right? The average peak season age for wide receivers, it happens between ages 23 and 29, 72.91% of the time, 55.44% of the time. It's between ages 25 and 29. So if you look after age 30, you only have like a 6% rate of peak seasons, right? And so what I understand that you don't want to, I don't want to frame this as saying, you don't want to take Mike Evans if you don't think he's going to have one of his peak seasons. I think it's baked in that he's not, if you said peak Mike Evans, you'd take him first round, right? We're still talking about a third round guy here, but it's just that, man, he has a history of hamstring injuries, right? And you start putting it together with age, you start putting on with the age 32 stuff. It's like he's at a streak of 1,000 yard seasons right now that's tied with Jerry Rice. And is it safe to say that that's going to continue? 2015 hamstring, 2019 hamstring, 2020 he played through a lingering hamstring, 2021 he missed a game due to the hamstring, 2022 he had another hamstring, 2024 he re-aggravated the pre-existing hamstring injury in week 7, exited that game early, played constant Julio Jones-like candidate to be used as a decoy whenever he's having this hamstring stuff. I look at it and I begin to think to myself, I'm like, am I really going to be using my third round pick here on an age 32 wide receiver that by the skin of his teeth got to 1,004 yards last season to keep it going. He's out of his contract in 2025. He just said recently when he was asked if he was going to be playing in the Olympic Games for flag football, he said in 2028, he said I'm going to be retired in 2028. This might be his last season. With that said, if it is his last season, he wants to go out a blaze of glory, break the record, break the tied record with Jerry Rice for most consecutive or most total. I think he already has most consecutive, most total 1,000-yard seasons. I could see him riding off into the sunset after this season. If he gets to 1,000, I'll be very, very happy for him. I just think at this point, man, there's with the age, with the injury history, and just the price, it doesn't match up for me. So I think that Mike Evans is really risky in the third round.
Extremely risky. And you bring up Julio Jones, Andre Johnson, these guys that really, when they hit the cliff drops. And as much as we love Mike Evans, the prospect, it's like it feels like it's too much of a gamble. Like Usually you feel
First
dependable.
ballot Hall of Famer Mike Evans. I hate to say it. I mean, just you know what I mean. It's so crazy.
I mean, even Andre Johnson though into his season 11, which was last year for Mike Evans, was Andre Johnson's age 32 in Houston. He had 1,400 yards. That next year, age 33, which is season 12, which is Mike Evans, 900, 500 done. 900, 500 done from 1,400 down. And that's just as fast as it can go. And it really zaps the guys. We've already even seen, like, I know DeAndre Hopkins is kind of in the same boat right now. It just kind of feels like he's getting zapped right now. Julio Jones, 1,300, 700, 400 done. Like it can drop off really quickly when you hit that wall, especially for these supreme outliers that have had sensational decade career,
of which Mike Evans is one, but it has to come to an end at some point. I'm not saying it comes to an end this time, but how surprised would you be if he has one of these seasons where it's kind of like, what'd you say about the Julio season, 900, 400, and then Andre Johnson, 700, 400. It's like, what if this is this 800 before what would be the final, 350 or whatever, and he knows that's what's going to happen next year, so he just quits. I think it's within the realm of.
The only way you get beat here, the only way you get beat in my eyes, because I don't think he has a 1,400 yard season in his body. Does he have 800, 900? Can he get maybe to that 1,000 again, just by the skin of his teeth again?
12 touchdowns.
Maybe. Yeah. But it's the touchdowns. The touchdowns is where you get beat. And if Godwin's not 100% all year and he's playing above and beyond. But again, that's the only way you really get beat here. And I think it's just a little bit too risky, just as you said. The ADP is just a touch, a round and a half too high right now.
It's like it's just the opportunity cost in that third round is very, very, very hard.
My third and final is going to be Khalil Shakir. He's going on for right now 83rd overall consensus, 103 on Draft Wizards, 77 ECR, 84 ESPN, and 80th on Underdog. And the Khalil Shakir thing, if you guys have been listening to the RosterWatch pod for the last 2 months, I've talked about Keon Coleman as one of my favorite players, second-year breakouts from last year's draft class, a guy that should, be in for a great role this year. Kind of the inverse would be this Khalil Shakir thing, who it's a guy that went from 20 targets to 45 to 100 last year, averaged 12.2 fantasy points per game. Khalil Shakir is a fine receiver. He's a fine guy that can just go out there, be mad dependable, play 70% of the snaps in the slot. We like Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid should, we've been waiting for him to take that step forward, but, year 3, year 4 as a tight end really allows you to do that. I like Keon Coleman. We like James Cook as a player in Buffalo. Buffalo should be good. But for Khalil Shakir to be going off 83rd right now in the conversations of Juwan Jennings, who averaged 14 fantasy points per game last year, Travis Kelce's down in his neighborhood right now. There's just other guys in this conversation to me that pose real upside. Caleb Johnson's going 5 picks higher. Caleb Johnson, I've talked about, like he should be a better version of Najee Harris in Pittsburgh, going off in that same ballpark. Juwan Jennings, like we talked about, Travis Kelce, different guys in this category that I would love to click that button on. Najee Harris at 96th overall. We just talked about the inverse with Omari and Hampton. If you still believe Najee Harris has 1,000 yards in his legs at age 27, Najee Harris is going 10 picks later than Khalil Shakir. He's a guy, to me, Khalil Shakir, averaging 12 fantasy points per game. That should average 12 fantasy points per game again and again and again. And I want in this round to expend that draft pick on a guy that's going to give me go from 12 to 16, 12 to 18, 14 to 18. Give me a little bit more consistency. Chris Godwin's 10 picks ahead of him coming off an injury. But who were the guys at the beginning of last season, Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin, who are playing at a different level of output the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season before injuries happened? That's not something I see in Khalil Shakir's future in Buffalo with Keon Coleman, with these tight ends, and with James Cook.
Fair enough for me. I don't have much interest in Khalil Shakir myself. Rarely have. I think he's consistently a little bit he's consistently been a little bit overvalued throughout, even going back to his dynasty rookie drafts. All right. My final one here. This one I don't mind doing. And it's weird because I was kind of trying to check the sentiment on X earlier today to see if I was kind of whether or not other people kind of thought this. It feels like people are in on Joe Mixon, and I don't think I'm in on Joe Mixon this season. Joe Mixon right now, if you just look at it, so if you've just been playing on underdog, right, or you've just been looking at like the expert rankings and stuff like that, you see him going off at like 52. You see him ranked around 50 as far as the consensus at Fantasy Pros. But sure enough, lo and behold, here come the season long drafters. And if you look on ESPN right now, he's going at number let's see, Mixon. He's going at number 31 on ESPN, so third round. And on the Draft Wizard, he's going at 34, so third round as well. So we're talking third round Joe Mixon here for home leagues. Okay. Whenever we look at Joe Mixon, what I see in him is I see a 51.4% stuff rate per fantasy points last season.
Great stat, by the way.
It's a great stat, but it's like that. Anybody else, like all the guys that you're talking about, like the Zamir Whites of the world, right? With these stuff rates above 50%.
This is why it's a great stat. I heard you pull this up the other day, and I was like, this is the stat. Like when you're looking at running backs, like this is the B-Rob, Javante, Tank, Gus, like
Dobbins.
Like, what are we looking at here?
Right. So they're all bad, right? And so Joe Mixon is right there in that 50% plus stuff rate along with the Antonio Gibsons of the world and stuff like that. It wasn't good. And all the Texans went ahead and did was trade off their two highest drafted offensive linemen because they didn't like the culture of their locker room as far as their offensive line. They thought that Laramie Tunsil was creepy. I don't know exactly what it was, but they didn't like him. They didn't like Kenyon Green. And what they did here was they now have they have Cam Robinson now. They're moving Titus Howard to right guard, Blake Fisher at the right tackle, and then I was sure that they were going to get somebody before the Ariante Ursary level of offensive line prospects in this year's draft. I was just sure of it, and they didn't. And Cody, you could speak to this more than I can. I didn't look at him and see him as somebody that's going to come in to be completely ready. I saw a heck of an athlete. I think he could be good eventually. He's going to be a project. I think that this offensive line, it's not going to be, when we do the offensive line rankings, they're objectively not going to be as good.
Bottom 10?
I don't know if it'll be. I just know that
you're predicting. You're predicting right now. If you to say
probably, and then the other thing with Mixon, he was 30%. Even in PPR, he was 30% touchdown dependent last year. What if this offense is not as good? Like 30% of it, like we used to say in old standard leagues, we'd be like, man, you get up to 30, 35%, you're touchdown dependent. In PPR, that's very touchdown dependent. There were only a few, and interestingly, some of the guys that were more, I was interested to see that both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery were more touchdown dependent than Joe Mixon last year. But other than that, you're looking at like James Cook, Kyron Williams. They
scored a ton.
Yeah. Well, it's like it just came in buckets for those guys as far as their scoring. Derrick Henry was ahead of him, right? So out of the top 50 running backs, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, the sixth most touchdown dependent, and he's not on the Lions, right? He's not on the Ravens. He's not on one of these high flying teams like this. We can't say that about the Houston Texans. We can't call them a high powered offense. They got their offensive coordinator. How can you even do it? Like we can't just say, okay, let's just go back to the 2023 season and let's base everything based on that as far as what as far as what we're expecting out of CJ Stroud in this offense. This is an offense that got their offensive coordinator fired last season. So are they always going to be in scoring position? What does his 85% touch share inside the 5 really mean? Like if they're not inside there as often, to be able to get him to that 30% touchdown dependent mark in PPR, it's too much. And you think to yourself, well, in PPR, they can at least buttress his floor by his receiving output, which I would normally totally agree with. But they did bring in Woody Marks. Woody Marks, if you just look at the running backs last year in the class, he had the 4th highest team reception share in the whole draft last season. He caught 14% of his team's footballs in his final season. He's a receiving back. What do you think they're going to use him as in this in this offense? Joe Mixon's turning 28 years old this year, which historically has been the running back cliff. He has an injury history. That it's his injury history. It's not great. 2018 knee injury, 2020 the foot injury. That's the one that you worry about most, because even though it was 2020, that was a Liz Frank injury. He had ankle and quadriceps last year that he played through. They're sniffing around J.K. Dobbins, and if they brought him in, that would flip this ADP on its head, I would think, even though J.K. Dobbins isn't good anymore. And you say, Alex, who cares so much about the 2023 injuries or the 2024 injuries for Joe Mixon? That's not predictive or whatever. Who cares if he's 20? But be like, what do you say about the fact that even right now at OTAs, the dude's limping around in a walking boot?
This is Anthony Richardson. You're listening to RosterWatch.
This is AJ Brown, and you're listening to RosterWatch.
This is Josh Allen, and you're listening to RosterWatch.